Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Cheltenham Raw, brought to you by oddschecker and PricedUp. I'm your host, George Elek. I'm delighted to be joined by two of oddschecker's tipsters, Andy Holding and Ginger Joe, as we look back at last week's racing and the news surrounding the Cheltenham Festival, look ahead to what's coming up this weekend, but also we are combing through a couple of the big ones. We have the Gold Cup, we have the Champion Chase, and we have the Ryanair Chase. There'll be the three races that we are going through in depth. And we've listened to the feedback. We've looked at the comments underneath the blogger video on episode 1. We've seen what you're all saying, what you're all asking for. So Blogger is back. Next week, we'll be in studio with the racing blogger and Andy Holding as we look at the handicaps, the last races that we have to cover in detail ahead of the Cheltenham Festival. Joe, you were just saying off air before we hit record, that oddschecker ticker is getting ever closer to when we jump for the Supreme in what, 11 days time? 12 days time?
Yeah, 11, 12. Yeah, it's nice. It's really good. Exciting times now. We've done a lot of talking now. It's nearly time to put everything on the line and see how we go. And like we said, we've been sort of checking into the oddschecker website daily. So to see it nearly at single digits, George, it's I just can't wait for it to get underway now. I really can't.
You say we've done a lot of talking. I've got a feeling there's going to be a lot of talking done between now and the first.
That's true.
Andy,
yeah.
Andy, imagine you're a bit busy man when it comes to previews between now and then.
Yeah, I've got a few, but not like in.
You need a new agent.
To be honest, I don't really kind of like go looking for them because I just don't like doing too many. I mean, the likes of, Johnny Deneen, bless him. He's obviously a very popular guy, great talker, great raconteur. He's the kind of guy that you'd want on those sort of, to tour the circuits and do, as many possibly can, all that kind of stuff. But you end up getting burnt out. I think the most I did was 5 one year, and I was absolutely out of my feet. I just think you need to condense your thoughts into sort of 2 or 3 previews at most. If it's particularly like a lot of them go out online anyway, if you're just repeating yourself and trying to come up with different angles. So to be honest, 1 or 2 for me is absolutely ideal.
Well, after that ringing endorsement for preview nights, I'm going to plug a couple now. I am hosting one for PricedUp in London on Tuesday night with Johnny Deneen as one of the panel hosts. That is in Clapham. Check out PricedUp social channels for the details there. Oddschecker hosting a live event around with the Racing Weekly team. So check out Oddschecker social around that. And then Andy and I will be doing a preview as well in the week before. So keep your eyes peeled. Loads more content coming out from PricedUp and from oddschecker ahead of the Cheltenham Festival. And as I say, next week will be the final episode of the Cheltenham Raw as we look ahead to the handicaps with Andy and Stephen Power, the racing blogger. Right, let's get into the action then. And we're going to kick off, as we always do on the Cheltenham Raw, by having just a quick comb through what's happened since we last spoke. And Andy, I'm going to come to you first because some frustrating news coming out, especially after the form had been franked with Cowabunga seemingly out of the festival.
Yeah, real shame. Shame for those that have backed him. Shame for the race itself, the turners, because we were looking at having a real stellar race over the 2.5 mile trip. I still think we'll have a good one. Let's don't forget we've got Final Demand, the New Lion, and the Yellow Clay. Cowabunga would have certainly add some extra spice and substance. The one thing we can say is a form line with Cowabunga has been, franked in uncertain terms with William Money, who was extremely impressive on the eye and the clock as well the other day when he won at Fairy House. I think he's definitely come into the equation for the Supreme Novices. As far as other horses are concerned, the sort of main ones I took away on the time figures were Tripoli Flyer. It was good when he won the Dovecote. Went a good gallop that day. There was no hiding place. There was plenty of pace on, as we thought there would be, with quite a few front runners in there. The fact that Celtic Dino, who normally makes the pace, he couldn't get to the front, suggests that they went a good tempo. And then, when they sort of were really going through the gears down the straight, his stamina kicked into play. Whether he's going to be as effective around Cheltenham is open to question.
16 to 1 for the Supreme.
Oh, I think he's the best of the English. There's no doubt that our numbers suggest he is. And, he beat the right horses, the Miami Magics, the Celtic Dinos, horses that have been running good numbers and winning and running well in grade 2s and grade 1s. So he definitely sets the standard over here. But, he's up against 3 or 4 good Irish horses. So he might just come up a bit short. I think if the owner wasn't Cheltenham based and he's wanted a runner in the Supreme or a run at Cheltenham all his life, I think Fergal O'Brien would, if he had his way, perhaps go to Aintree and skip Cheltenham, go there a fresh horse because he won't have Quebec the Board or Romeo Coolio running in that. I think that wouldn't have been the sensible option, but he was pretty good, no doubt, at Kempton. Very, very impressive. Indeed.
And Joe, Lalamba's form taking a bit of a hit over the weekend too, with Mondo Man being turned over, as well as St Pancras too. Andy has said for quite a long time that East India Dock should be favourite for the Triumph. East India Dock is now favourite for the Triumph, just shy of 2-1 with Lalamba at 2-1. What did you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't take too much of a negative from it. I know the form hasn't necessarily worked out with that run from Mondo Man, but the fact that he's been keen on both of his starts, I wouldn't take the form too literally. And what we've seen from Lulamba so far has been pretty good. He showed all the right attributes. He travelled nicely. He was a good jumper, and he showed plenty of speed as well. I suppose the issue, if you like, with Lulamba is that he's going to go straight to Cheltenham now. So we're expecting an exceptional performance to come. And if it does, it's going to have to be on the biggest stage. So, I mean, look, Andy's been a big pointer towards East India Dock for a while now. So I would be intrigued to sort of know what speed figure he got out of Lulamba from his debut. But I wouldn't be worried too much about the fact that Mondo Man didn't frank the form. He's been desperately keen in both of his starts now. But like I said, Lulamba's going to have to prove it on the biggest stage that he is up to East India Dock's level. We're quite quick as well to look at horses like Lulamba and just suggest that he's Sir Gino 2.0, and it's probably not wise to do that. Certainly not after just one run in England. But look, he goes over live chance, doesn't he? But Hello Neighbour and East India Dock are two that have had the proven form now. They've done it a couple of times. Lulamba's going to have to be pretty special to do it at Cheltenham, that's for sure.
Yeah, and there was a moment, I think this time last week, where Lulamba took a bit of a walk on the exchanges as well, which can, especially with what we've seen from leaks in the Henderson yard, especially in recent times, maybe some alarm bells ringing there. Andy, before we get on to the Cheltenham previews, what about Katat Dori, the really impressive winner of the Ladbrokes Trophy? He entered in for the Ultima, for the National Hunt Chase, and also the Kinmure.
Yeah, we got a very good time figure for that race at Kempton on Saturday. The best on the card, unsurprising really. It was a relentless gallop throughout. It looked that way on the eye, and then when you sort of crunch the numbers, that revealed that it's sort of backed up that view. If he goes to Cheltenham, he's going to be one of a whole host of seemingly well handicapped horses that could improve or could improve even further. I think we've quite got to the bottom of him just yet. The odds obviously in great form, so he's definitely in the conversations indeed for something like the Ultima, I'd imagine. Just getting back to that conversation we were having about Lulamba, I found it odd when we talked about that race last week in the preview why Lulamba wasn't turning up in the first place. I thought that was a little bit of a strange move. I think it was a combination of the fact that he didn't run there. He's now going to go straight to Cheltenham with another run under his belt. I've heard that some of his schooling wasn't so good over his hurdles at home. That's probably one of the reasons why he didn't go. They weren't keen on chucking him in the deep end because of that. And then obviously, Mondo Man to a degree sort of semi let the form down. I think it put into context what Lulamba did. The fact that Mondo Man did pull hard at Kempton and couldn't quite sustain his run. But Lulamba was, he was up against the same horse who did exactly the same thing at Ascot. So, his numbers just, or his number that day at Ascot just doesn't really stack up anywhere near as good as East India Dock as of yet. And of course, Mamba number 5, if you're looking to, do the ultimate self-fulfilling prophecy, he was pulled up at Cheltenham behind East India Dock. He didn't get even halfway around the track that day. Just to show you how strong James Owen's horse was on that occasion. So, yeah, very much all roads are leading to East India Dock in the Triumph.
Right, let's get into the main crux of this show, and that is looking ahead to a couple of the biggest races at the Cheltenham Festival and covering them in depth. These prices I'll be reading out will be the prices with PricedUp. If you haven't got an account, I would definitely recommend doing so ahead of the festival. They'll be boosting loads of horses across the week, across sports as well. So if you like your odds being boosted consistently, PricedUp is the place to go for that. And we'll kick off now with the Cheltenham Gold Cup. Galopin de Champs is the 8-13 favourite to retain his crown. Banbridge 13-2, Factor File 8-1, Monty Star 10-1, Corbett's Cross 14-1, Grange Clear West 18-1, Long Press 28-1, 40-1 bar those. Now I had the pleasure of going to a cinema in South London earlier this week with Aidan Coleman. It wasn't a date. PricedUp just and oddschecker sent us there to watch some of his finest moments in the saddle at Cheltenham, but we also watched the Gold Cup from last year together to get any pointers, any clues as to how to go about, finding the winner of this year's Gold Cup. And he basically was of the opinion that there isn't really anyone who can beat Galopin de Champs should he turn up in his normal fine fettle. Andy, would you go with that?
I don't think there's a racing professional out there worth his salt that genuinely feels as though Galopin de Champs is going to get beat, or more to the point, has got any strong competition this year. This all sort of goes back to when Best Mate won his third Gold Cup. I think it was quite a weak affair that day. Lots of Harbour Pilot were in it, lots of sort of like horses that were just making up the numbers and just running around for second and third and fourth and all that kind of stuff. I think the worst kept secret in the game is that Factor File is going to go to the Ryanair. They're obviously not making that public, similar to Gordon Elek with brighter days ahead. But reading between the lines and looking what Factor File did at the DRF and his previous run, it doesn't make too much sense why he would run him. If Factor File, put it this way, ran in this race, he'd be about a 5-1 shot, where he's going to be 5-4 to win the Ryanair. Something that JP McManus, I'm sure, he's fully aware of. Obviously, there's doubts about Banbridge staying the trip, but you can't back him at the moment until you know exactly what the ground's going to be on the day. He's just absolutely reliant on good or good to soft ground at the worst, particularly if he's going to be getting 3 mile 2 in the Gold Cup round Cheltenham. If it was soft, I don't think he'd run, but if it was soft and he did run, I don't think he'd get the trip. So he's a horse you cannot possibly touch until the day. And then you're sort of getting onto what's going to be running for second and third if you are going to have a bet. You'd be looking towards the likes of either Monty Star or Corbett's Cross. Monty Star can't possibly beat Galopin de Champs, and he won't, but he's got a good chance of nicking the frame because he stays well. And obviously Corbett's Cross is the same. He stays well, and he's a Cheltenham Festival winner. You could just see him galloping on and picking up pieces when other horses are faded. So it's a very, very difficult race to assess for me to offer up any kind of value bet at the moment. I mean, you could argue that the 8-13 for Galopin de Champs is actually value. I think he'll go off 2-5 on the day. So if you are looking into just locking a price and perhaps sticking in some short price multiples, then I certainly wouldn't put you off that. But I mean, it's not my kind of horse I'd be backing. I don't think I'll be backing any of the short price favourites at Cheltenham. Unless I was sticking in some multiple bets. So I think we as only professionals, me and Joe, could only possibly say, we're going to tip this, we're going to put this up if we are going to back it or put it up in our column, and the answer is unequivocally no.
8-13, about a 2-5 shot doesn't sound too bad to me. But Joe, how do you see this?
Oh, I mean, look, he's just extraordinary, isn't he? He turns up year on year. He's got 3 Irish Gold Cups. He's probably now gonna put his name on a third English Gold Cup as well, and fully deserves to do so. I mean, I feel at this stage he could pretty much underperform by about £10 and still have enough to beat what's looking likely to line up in the race. I echo a lot of what Andy said, to be honest. I'm of the opinion that Factor File surely drops back and runs in the Ryanair Chase now. He settled much better at the DRF. He actually eyeballed Galopin coming over the last, and then Galopin just sort of put 10 lengths between himself and Factor File from there going out to the line. He's just exceptional. He's a proper galloper. He jumps just superbly. Even if he meets one too short, he's very, very smart, gets himself to the other side, and he lands running away from his obstacles as well. And not only that, by the time you get to the 3 mile mark, he's still got himself a turn of foot. I just don't know how you're going to logically take him on. And bar any sort of accident, hopefully it doesn't happen, he's going to be extremely hard to beat. I love Monty Star. I think he's like a real old school steeplechaser, superb at jumping. He gets his front legs up really quick, really does jump these fences well. But again, is he going to be able to lay a glove on Galopan? I can't really see it myself at the moment. Corbett's Cross doesn't jump well enough for me to be winning or competing too well in a Gold Cup. I'm sure he's going to stay on really nicely coming up the hill, but by that time, I would imagine that Galopan's going to be lengths ahead coming up that straight. I just find it hard to see who's going to be able to live with him at those sort of fractions. Banbridge, if it turns up here, like Andy said, good ground, bit of good to soft, I think he is likely to prove best of the rest. He stayed well enough in the King George. I know it's a big difference to 3 miles at Kempton and 3 mile 2 at Cheltenham, but he's a horse that's possibly getting a little bit better with age. I think himself and Monty Starr are going to pick up the pieces. But look, we want to see the greats go and do what they do best. And Galopan just looks exceptional, George. He really, really does. Like Andy said, you can't take him on with any strong case at all, to be honest. He looks far the best in this race.
Your Monty Star 10-1 if you do want to back Monty Star each way against Galopan, but it might be a case of waiting until the day and seeing if there's a without market possibly if you want to back something in the race that isn't Galopan de Champs. Let's go across now because the form kind of ties in a bit more straight into the Ryanair Chase now, where Factor File is the 7-4 favourite ahead of Ile Francais at 4-1. Spillane's Tower is 7-1. Protector at 15-2. Gaelic Warrior 17-2. Jungle Boogie 14-1. Jello and El Fabiolo both 16-1. Banbridge 18-1. 20-1 Hartwood and 25-1 Bardos. Joe, will give you first run at the Ryanair.
Yeah, I mean, as we were just sort of discussing with Factor File, I'm pretty sure he's going to turn up at this race. The price may give you a bit of that suggestion as well. But it's an interesting race, the Ryanair. I think if he did run in the Gold Cup, he's susceptible to get beat by Galopan de Champs and only Galopan de Champs. However, if he runs in the Ryanair, just with the way that the race may pan out, he is susceptible to get beat potentially by more horses if things don't necessarily go to plan for him. Look, he's definitely going to be the right favourite for this race. But I have got a slight inkling here that Jungle Boogie, the veteran, if you like, at this stage, is being slightly overlooked. He won really well last time out from the front, jumped terrifically, apart from going out to the left-hand side. But he's coming into this race fresh. He's very lightly raced. And the form that he offers in the book is well up there with the likes of Protector Rat, Spillane's Tower, Jello. I think he's probably been a little bit overlooked at his price of 16-1. I like the fact that he's going to come into this race a little bit fresh as well. He is a little bit older. And if we're going to see the best of him, perhaps coming into a race fresh is the best option. So I think he'd be worth a look for the each way angle. I'm not sure what to make of Ile Francais at the moment, George. He's a horse that I just have struggled to take to. I know he's got a lot of ability, but I'm not necessarily sure that he's going to be able to pull off the Alaho tactics in this sort of race and go from the front. I just feel like, again, he's going to be caught a little bit late on for a fast finisher. Look, again, Factor File, he is the right favourite, but I have got a sneaky suspicion that we're going to see a really big run from Jungle Boogie. He's a very likeable horse, lightly raced. And like I said, he won well last time out despite jumping left on a right-handed track the whole way round. I think he's a very good horse and fully deserves his place at a big price. But do I trust him at this sort of age at the same time? So, you know, there's question marks, but he would be the one I'd consider.
Jungle Boogie 14-1. There travelled. I mean, again, because I watched the race yesterday or 2 days ago with Aidan, travelled really well into the Gold Cup as well last year before, you know, obviously not quite getting the trip.
He did. He was probably travelling best, to be honest, until 2 out, 3 out. He just didn't necessarily get home. But I'm sure from that day, everything has been geared towards the Ryanair, especially from his run the last day, where, again, he beat some really useful horses. So, look, I like the fact he's coming in fresh and Henry will leave no stone unturned with Jungle Boogie. Perhaps he could cause some sort of shock, George.
Yeah, Jungle Boogie there, as we say. 14-1 with priced up for the Ryanair. Joe making a strong case for him. Andy, how do you see this?
A difficult race for me to look at objectively now, having already put up Factor File on my column back in January, following his defeat by Galopan de Champs. I took a view that day that he's more likely to drop back, and the DRF run confirmed that even more so. I thought he was more of a weaker finisher that day than he was the first time. So a lot just hinges on that. And I think the two races we're going to discuss now hinge on quite a few factors. If Factor File runs in this, which he's looking more 75-25 that he will. Then Elek Fronte, according to connections, might go and run in the Champion Chase because they don't really want to be taken on factor file. There's a good chance that Spillane's Tower might not go to Cheltenham full stop because, it may be better on a right-handed track. The likes of Fairy House, they've got grade ones there, the Punchestown Festival. That's where he's done most of his good work up to now. So then you're looking down towards the likes of Protectorat, who looks fairly solid at the moment as an each-way alternative to factor file. At last year's winner. Joe's already mentioned Jungle Boogie, and we're not really sure what Gaelic Warrior is going to do, whether he's going to come here along with El Fabiolo, or maybe one of them goes back into the Champion Chase. So these races are very, very difficult to have a strong opinion on at the moment, particularly at the prices. I can't sit here and tip factor file and say he's a great bet at 6-4 when, I've put him up at, much bigger odds further on in the season. So would I back him now at the price? No, I'll just watch. He's going to be 6-4 on the day. He's not going to go off crazily short. There'll still be people out there that look to get him. We don't know what the full field will be. There'll be other alternatives, each way alternatives, etc., etc. So it's a bit of a stagnant market. Priced up a standout 7-4. I suppose you could argue that's again similar to Galopin de Champ, just slightly above his likely market price on the day if you wanted to lock in a price. But sort of like without the non-runner no bet, you're sort of, you're treading on eggshells with that as well.
Indeed, yeah. So one to swerve for until the day for Andy there, but factor file obviously getting a positive mention, but maybe not one to back at the prices as we stand. But Jungle Boogie very much the selection for Joe. We'll move on now to the Queen Mother Champion Chase, where John Bon is the even money favourite. Marine Nationale 13-2, Gaelic Warrior 7-1. Energumene 8-1, Solness 8-1, Elek Fronte 10-1, El Fabiolo 16-1, Founder 50, 28-1, 40-1 bar those. Andy, will come to you first here. Is John Bon one for the multis, or is it one to swerve?
No, I thought long and hard about this race actually for the last few days. And again, we're likely to get a clearer picture perhaps this time next week. So when we're doing sort of like the last edition of this, it might be a little bit more relevant. But you've just got to try and second guess what's likely to happen. Like I say, there's going to be a knock-on effect. There's going to be ramifications all the way down the line from the Gold Cup to the Ryanair to the Champion Chase, which makes the dynamics of these races totally different, perhaps in another 6 or 7 days' time. My reading of is that we're going to get Gaelic Warrior maybe stepping up in trip. We're going to get Elek Fronte maybe coming down into this race because he doesn't want to take on factor file. As it stands, I think, a lot of the sort of floaters, the Nergamins, the Solnesses, the Marine Nationals, they look like coming here. And, you're dealing with a lot of horses who, we know the form of so far this season. So, other than John Bon, they're fairly easy to work out. I quite like Marine Nationale. I thought he ran a hell of a race in the DRF. He was the only one that got anywhere near Solness. He was a good sort of 15, 20 lengths behind halfway down the back. And then he's managed to get the winning deficit down to single digits. I thought, he came out the best on the final circuit sectionals that I do. And, he seems to be sort of recovering from that problem that he had over a year ago when we didn't really know where we stood with Marine Nationale. He kind of went into the wilderness a little bit, particularly, his first season over fences, but we didn't see the supreme the winner. Don't forget he was odds on to win the Arca, wasn't he, after his first run? But he seems to be getting back to somewhere near the level that we know he's capable of. The yard's in good form. There wouldn't be any more poignant winner, of course, what happened to poor old Michael Sullivan than the Marine Nationale in those colours for Barry O'Connell. So yeah, I think he's a fairly solid each way bet at the current moment in time, around at 7-1, 13-2. He'd be where my each way money would go.
Marine Nationale 13-2, second favourite for the Queen Mother Champion Chase, and the selection at this moment in time with PricedUp. Joe, how do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, George, anyone that knows me will be aware I am the biggest Marine Nationale fan on this planet. He's given me a lot in this racing world, to the point where I've been visiting him every couple of weeks at the Barry Connor Yard for the past season and a half. And he was the one that gave me a connection to Barry and Mikey. So I would love nothing more than to see him win. And he definitely gets a hard time from what he showed. He was absolute dynamite as a novice hurdler. Now look, if it was up to me, I would have actually liked to see them stay over hurdles, but look, that's none of my business. He has gone chasing, and he is now starting to find his speed again. He's by a horse called French Navy, and he's inherited a ton of that speed. I think if you go back and look at the DRF, like Andy said, he closed the gap really quickly from the second last all the way up to the line. And I think at that point, if Sean Flanagan had that ride again, he probably thought Solness was going to come back to him a little bit more that day. But what I will say about Marine is he's got better and better and better with every single run. Solness has had 17 chase starts. Marine's only had 5. He is really starting to come good. And the nearer we get to the festival, the more possible it is that we're going to get ground on good to soft, or the good side of good to soft. Anyway, I know they'll probably give it a little bit of watering anyway, but he is a horse absolutely built for speed. Now, if we look at the race itself, you've got the likes of possibly Solness and Ile Francais going to try and go off at a hell of a gallop. I don't think they're going to get those sort of tactics when they get to Cheltenham, because if they go off in front, I think Nico's going to be quite happy to send John Bon off in pursuit as well with that sort of pace. And that'll just set up really nicely for a sprint finish with Marine Nationale. Look, his jumping's got a lot better. He's certainly happier within himself. He's fit. He's well. I would love to see him come over and win the champion chase. And who knows, Jazzy Matty might go and win the race after, which was obviously the double for Mikey O'Sullivan on that day. So look, this might be a fairy tale win. I might be a little bit biased towards Marine Nationale, but I'll tell you what, he's got the speed. He jumps like a stag, and he's really starting to find his feet. It will be his 6th run as a chaser. He's the up and coming one, if you ask me. Look, John Bond's going to be hard to beat, but I think Marine Nationale is the best 2-mile chaser in Ireland at this point in time.
Lovely stuff. Double thumbs up from the guys for Marine Nationale, and as they both say, it would be a poignant moment on Wednesday if Marine Nationale can win the champion chase for everyone concerned, given recent events. We'll move on now to the weekend's action. We've got kind of a few bits and bobs around Kelso and Newbury. We'll kick off, shall we, at Newbury, just looking to see what prices, what race we've got priced up. We'll start with the Veterans Handicap Chase, where we've got Credo is the 3-1 favourite ahead of Sam Brown at 7-2, Gustavian 4-1, Good Boy Bobby 11-2, Quick Wave 7-1, Grandad's Cottage 8-1, Cloudy Glen 10-1, Amateur 25-1. Now, sorry, 28-1. Normally on the show we look to kind of preview these races with a bit of a view towards the festival, but at this stage, realistically, it's just going to be a straight up preview and see if there's anything we can find for value on the day. Andy, anything you like here?
Not races I tend to sort of bet in, if I'm being absolutely brutally honest, George.
We're happy to move on though if we don't.
Yeah, I mean, I look with the dead 8 runners. If they all go, then you'd be looking towards Sam Brown. He ran a Herculean race, didn't he, at Market Raising a couple of runs ago. They went a right gallop that day, and he chased the winner home. Strong all the way. He's run quite well subsequently behind Jello, was it, over the track the other day, in a much better race than this. So even at the ripe old age of 13, he's still running to a very high level. He looks probably arguably the most reliable of the ones I could see here. A lot of these, are pulling up last time out, like Good Boy Bobby. Obviously, Credo and Gustavian, they're representing yard in good nick at the moment. They were first and second last time out. You'd certainly factor them in. But yeah, I think Sam Brown's fairly solid.
Joe, anything to add, or should we move on to the Greatwood?
I think we should move on. I'm really struggling here, actually. Couldn't really find a decent angle into the race. Generally don't punt in these veteran chases as well, unless one looks sort of primed for a race. So I'll leave this one be for the time being.
We'll touch on the Greatwood and then we'll head over to Kelso. But we've got Billy the Real Big Red and Iroko, the 92 favourites for the Greatwood, the 3:45 on Saturday at Newbury. I should say Iroko obviously entered in and destined, it looks like, for Kelso. So be wary of backing Iroko here. Albeit now post-X, you will obviously get your money back. Can Do Kid is 11-2. Vincenzo 7-1. Saint Segal 9-1. Scarface and Lamilos also 9-1. Cop Mask is 12-1. Midnight River 14-1. Paint the Dream 14-1. 16-1 bar those. Andy, anything here that you like in the Greatwood?
Yeah, I mean it's brutal, this race, isn't it? When you look at it, the one thing you first stands out is how much pace there is here. there looks to be at least 3 or 4 front runners as far as I could see. So there shouldn't be any hiding place. You've got Paint the Dream in there, Vincenzo, Saint Segal. I think he'll go forward. I actually was really impressed with Saint Segal when he won here a couple of runs ago. He's been a horse that's been a bit hit and miss over the last 18 months. I remember one day at Ascot he was coming to win his race and he fell at the last. But he finally got his day in the sun, as I said here, 2 runs ago. I noticed that day as well, he's one of the only few horses that managed to win on the chase track this year at Newbury, going round the inside. It's been a bit of a graveyard this season for horses that have tried to either make all or go right round the inside. The best part of the track has been middle to near side in the home straight in particular. So I kind of upgraded his run that day, and he got beat by a well-handicapped horse last time out, the Kaluki Kid up in Musselburgh. I mean, again, that was a very, very tough race. They went a proper gallop in that race. So if he takes a lead here off something like the Billy the Real Big Red, who's again another horse who's likely to lead and doesn't necessarily go gung-ho from the front, then he's got a good cruising speed and kind of jumping technique to keep himself in the piece. So I'd probably take a little bit of a punt and suggest that Saint Segal might be the one to be on at this stage, but I certainly haven't nailed my colours to the mast yet enough to perhaps say I'm going to definitely put him up on my column yet.
Saint Segal 9-1. That is the top price in the market, and it's also the price that the priced up are about him. Joe, anything for you here?
Yeah, I'm quite intrigued by Vincenzo down at the bottom of the weights. He started this year by running in the Persian War behind Flying Fortune. It's some pretty decent form, and he probably didn't necessarily get the right tactics for him. But I think the idea was always just to get a couple of runs into him and then send him novice chasing. Now, since he's gone chasing, he's won 2 of his last 3 starts and seemingly just progressed with the experience. Again, if you look how he won on his first chase start in comparison to now, he just looks like much more the finished article. He's gone up £5 for his win the last day, but I think he's going to really enjoy Newbury. He won't have had this sort of ground before. It's looking like it's possibly going to be really soft, and I think he'll actually relish that. Sam Thomas has become a really good target trainer with his horses this year. Obviously, we briefly mentioned Katati Dory from last weekend. He's had Al Dancer win this year. He's done really, really well with his chasers. He just looks to me like a horse that's really improving with the experience. Like I said, the fact they started off this season over hurdles and we're quite happy to switch and send him chasing. Not only is it paid off, but it looks to me like it was a premeditated plan. And the fact he's won 2 of his 3, he's coming here off bottom weight. He's a horse going forward, improving the experience. I just think he ticks a lot of boxes here. He is coming up against a few better horses, but I think he's more than capable of handling it. And Dylan Johnson's taken off a further £3. And I must be honest, that's worth its weight in gold this season. He's a fantastic jockey. And I'd take a little bit of a squeeze at Vincenzo, I think, in this race here. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Vincenzo. We've got at 7-1. Again, top price in the market there with priced up. We'll cover off a couple of races over at Kelo. We'll kick off with that one that Iroko has entered in. Looks like a bit of a match. The listed chase, the second race on the card, the 145, Grey Dawning 4-6. 8-13. Iroko 13-8. El Elephant 10-1. Baron's Land 150-1. Joe, does this look right? The way they priced up the match here?
I'm not sure, George. I'm not sure because we initially had Grey Dawning at the beginning of the season being targeted towards the Gold Cup. Now, obviously, the Betfair Chase took a ton out of Grey Dawning. I'm sure if they could have the season again, they'd have possibly gone down a different route with him. But the fact they're not going to take their chances with him in the Gold Cup, yet they're happy to run just shy of 2 weeks before at Kelso, would suggest to me that he's possibly not going to be geared up to the 9s for this race. I don't know how much more hiding they can do with Iroko. I know they're obviously planning on running him in the Grand National, but recently I've heard the Green and Guerrero team saying they might not be going that route now. So perhaps on this occasion, with fitness and race planning, Iroko could be the one to side with. He's a very talented horse. There's definitely going to be more to come with him. And perhaps, obviously, with the Grand National not being too far away, he's probably the one that's going to be a bit more ready than Grey Dawning at this stage. And perhaps we won't see the best of Grey Dawning until Aintree at that meeting. But yeah, I wouldn't say they'd have Grey Dawning peaked for this race. So I'd probably take a chance with Iroko in a match bet really out of the pair here.
Take a chance on Iroko. Joe's the way Joe sees this. Are you on board with that line of thinking, Andy?
Yeah, I'd hope Rocco would, put it up to Grey Dawn at the very least here. I've stuck him up for my for the Grand National in my column a couple of weeks ago, so I'd be hopeful of a positive run on the way towards Aintree. I actually think the mare might run well here. Funny enough, I mean she's got a bit to find, well, more than a bit to find in the official ratings, El Elefante, but I've been massively impressed with her in the last 2 runs. She scooted away from a field at Ayr, I think it was 2 runs ago. That didn't really sort of result to a huge amount, but I thought she was really good the other day when she ran here. She had 4 opponents: Imagine, Prairie Wolf, and Ned Tanner, and they all had a bit of a nibble at her, and she just bolted clear. To be honest, I really like. I mean, it's a real bold move by Lucinda Russ. I'm sure they could have found easier races to run in than this, but she's bound to go off in front, and she gets into a rhythm. And the other 2 just don't fire. It wouldn't be the biggest mythical in the world if that was to run way beyond its expectations. So yeah, if I was going to have a bet in the race, I'd just have a round of drinks on Elefante.
El Elefante, 10-1 with priced up. The outsider of the outsider of 3, but there is an inner 4 on a race, is the way it probably looks at this moment in time. On to the handicap hurdle now, and Joe, there's one you like here. I'll quickly run through the prices. Ace of Spades 2-1, Mr. Bramley 7-2, Nabwood 6-1, Bold Light 7-1, Joe Cooker 10-1, 11-1, Inox Allen 14-1. Bar those, which one takes your fancy?
Yeah, I'm actually quite sweet on Nabwood here. He probably is going to be one that gets a few quid off me this weekend, and likely to end up in my column without giving away too many spoilers. But he tried 3 miles last time out, and he will probably stay the trip. But all of his best form does come around Kelso over this sort of trip. He's a massive box ticker for this weekend, and I think they would have highlighted this race for him as well. Nicky Richards obviously sends quite a lot of his runners to Kelso, and when he does, he's got a lot of success as well. He's got a really high strike rate around Kelso. He's generally a really solid jumper, and even though he unseated last time out, it wasn't anything to do with the jumping aspect at all. It was more of a notch on landing. He's actually well handicapped to go really well here. For me, he's probably one of the best bets of the weekend, and what is probably a small punting weekend for me at the same time. So yeah, he'd be one of my strongest selections of the week, actually. George Nabwood will take a lot of beating here, I think.
Nabwood 6-1. You're getting for a horse who'll take a lot of beating, according to Joe. That is again best price in the market and it's there with priced up. 2 more races to cover before we let you go. We've got the Novice Hurdle and then the More Battle Hurdle. With the Novice Hurdle to start with, we've got a bit of movement in this market since it opened half an hour or so ago, Andy, and we were talking about it off air. Vanderpoel is now the 130 favourite, ahead of Chart Topper at 4-1. Castle Carrick is 9-2. Dedicated Hero 5-1. Listen to Your Heart 13-2. Lagan Hill 15-2. Road Less Travelled 10-1. 22-1 bar those. And this looks to me, to my untrained eye, Andy, like a pretty strong Novice Hurdle.
Yeah, a lot of horses that have just worked their way through the grades, that haven't taken on any of the, in inverted commas, big guns yet, from connections that have decided to play safe and miss the festival, maybe with Aintree on their mind after running well here. I think we've got a good little race on our hands here. The 2 that have caught my eye visually and on the numbers that we keep, Vanderpoel definitely has to be number 1. He clocked a really big time when he won at Huntingdon on his rules debut. He wasn't knocked off the boards that day. He went off 3-1, but he was certainly expected to go well. And he didn't let his supporters down. Subsequently, the form has worked out incredibly well. George's Lad has won since. The 3rd has won. I think the 4th Series Challenge won a couple of times as well. And he was absolutely battered. So the race has gone the way the numbers suggested it would. He had a jog round at Ludlow the other day. Simpson, no questions asked, who had a prep for the Martin Pipe when winning at Ludlow for Ben Pauling. And I think this has been his target ever since. The other thing to notice as well is that of the last 21 runners that Ben Pauling has run, 11 of them have won. He had a stellar day last Saturday. I think Ben Jones, his jockey's last 9 rides, 8 of them have won. So you couldn't have a better yard stroke jockey combination heading into a big race like this. I think he'll definitely go off favourite. And looking at his point-to-point win over 3 miles, he beat Champagne Jury, who won first time out for Gavin Cromwell, and the third horse has won a point-to-point over in Ireland as well. So he stays 3 miles. So stepping him up to 2-2 on softest ground shouldn't necessarily be an issue. And the other one I like is Lagan Hill. Oh, sorry, Lagan Hill. I was going to say Lagan Hall. Lagan Hill. Henry Daly's had 2 horses this season that have really caught the eye. Strachan being one of them. He won 3 off the reel, and this horse ran in the same colours first time out and won. And then he did it again at Bang the other day in a very quick time. I know that Warren Greatwood thinks quite a bit of the runner-up that day, who goes to the EBF final. And he comes out quite well on the numbers that we've got. So, 2 against the field there. Van der Poel and Lagan Hill. I'll probably split mistakes on the 2.
Joe, how do you see it?
Yeah, quite similar to Andy, actually. A big liking to Van der Poel. I would also just about give the edge, though, to Lagan Hill. I agree. I think what I like about this sort of horse is he's winning despite not necessarily doing everything quite right. He has been a little bit green to start his races, but when he's been pushed along through the field, he's actually found plenty. And I like horses in this early stage that need a little bit of asking the questions, but when they do, they respond well. He just looks like he's going to have a massive engine. There's one at the bottom. Well, he's not at the bottom. Actually, number 2, Road Less Travelled for John Joe O'Neill. He's well worth keeping in your tracker with an eye for the future. He's a 3-mile pointer. He's got form with the likes of sort of Celtic Dino and others. He did pull up in the Formby, but he could have run last weekend against the likes of Tripoli Flyer, Celtic Dino, Miami Magic again. But they've opted to come here instead, and he obviously does have a £5 penalty to carry against a few of these. Now, he is bred for 3 miles, but he's been winning plenty over 2 miles and seemingly had no problem doing so at the same time. So, look, I think Lagan Hill's going to take a fair bit of stopping here, but I would be keeping an eye on Road Less Travelled with an eye to next year as a novice chaser.
Lovely stuff. There's someone drilling aggressively outside my window, so I'll try and keep my part short here. More battle hurdle. Vicio is a 3-1 favourite ahead of Tell Her the Name, 5-1, 7-1 Favourable Fortune, 8-1 Cracking Rhapsody. We'll call it at 10-1 bar. Joe, you tell us who you fancy here.
Yeah, Tell Her the Name, actually, George, one of the ones you mentioned. This could have actually been a horse that was touted to do much better things and possibly could have even went to Cheltenham. But the 2 miles is going to be absolutely ideal. This is a horse with plenty of speed. The faster the ground, I would suggest, actually, the better. I think this is going to be quite a nice horse to go forward with. Vicio has obviously got some nice form. So is the likes of Gentleman Bill, who's at a much bigger price. But Tell Her the Name for me, again, it's a real box ticker. Good traveller, plenty of speed, jumps well. And I just can't see him being too far away. The fact, again, that he's coming here rather than being targeted at the Cheltenham Festival would also suggest to me that he's been pretty much geared up to the 9s for this race. And he won't be far away running off a mark of 137. I think he's at least a 144 sort of horse in this sort of company.
Tell Her the Name, 5-1. Andy, how do you see it?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting race, not only for Saturday, but for priced up clients to have a look maybe at races at the Cheltenham Festival with a few of these doubling up. I think there's still a bonus and offer for this, isn't there? If you win here and win at the festival. I think it's very, very interesting that Emmett Mullins had McClory in the original declarations, and he's decided not to run that horse and save it straight for Cheltenham, either the County Hurdle or the Martin Pike, and run Vicio instead, who won the mare's race at the DRF. She obviously handles herself in a big field, off the back of a strong pace. She's entered up in quite a few races at the festival, Gold Cup, the Martin Pike. So if you're looking for sort of prices further down the line, you might want to sort of lock in a little bit of value just in case they either win or run well. Joe's horse, funny enough, is 33-1 for the County Hurdle. I think that's a big price because he looks the type that could easily do some damage in a strongly run Cheltenham race. I agree with Joe. He wants fast ground or good, as close to good as you possibly can. A couple of times last season, he just got bogged down on soft ground. So the drying conditions, if there are not going to get any rain up the weekend, will definitely play into his strength. I think this race is a real nightmare. I went up and down it all the way through the week thinking, is there a bet? Is there an angle? I've done exactly the same this morning prior to coming on here. And as it stands at the moment, I'm probably going to give it a swerve because I just think there's too many strong form lines, and there's quite a lot of horses here that have had good, strong course and distance form, like Cormier, like Slugger, like Cracking Deck Rhapsody won this race last year. So it's a tough one, even too tough for the likes of me, I'm afraid. I'll let Joe fly the flag for this podcast with tell her the name and wish him the best with that one.
Lovely stuff. Thank you both for sharing your tips, thoughts and insights on this week's episode of the Cheltenham Roar. The last episode of the series will be next week in studio. Andy's coming to London and we'll be joined by Stephen Power, the racing blogger, as we look at the handicaps at the Cheltenham Festival. So don't miss that. Plenty more Cheltenham content coming your way from oddschecker and Priced Up over the coming weeks as well. So keep your eyes peeled. Make sure you sign up to Priced Up. Might go and tell the guy outside drilling to sign up as well. As soon as you can, plenty of boosts and offers there. I'm going to jump off the call because no one wants to hear this. But in the meantime, enjoy the racing this weekend and please ensure that you're gambling responsibly.